So now we're still printing on conventional silver gelatin black and white paper. So we still have to make a negative that is designed to print well on silver gelatin paper. Now I would have to refer you to the earlier videos that I posted last year about how paper responds to density range. It would make a lot more sense if you watched those lessons. But again, we're going to go for a specific density range on our negatives that will print well on black and white paper. Okay, this here is a negative made in contact, so it's just sandwiched under glass and made this negative. So if you consider the density range that paper responds to, I had said that a negative should have a density range of at least 1.65 in order to produce white to black. So this to here should have a density range of 1.65. That gives it enough contrast so that when this is printed black, that will remain white. If it's less than 1 point, let's say it's 1.5. When this is black, that'll be gray because there's not enough density there. And this is printing onto a normal contrast black and white paper. I used the Ilford Multigrade at about 22 magenta, which is my normal, okay, as my aim. So if I was to take this and I measure, and you're not going to be able to see it because if I measure the high value, I'm getting density, that's 2.15. It's pretty high, 2.15. I'll write that down. And then if I measure the black step, 0.43. Incidentally, I put a piece of black tape here to get 4.2. So 5 minus 2, 3. 1.73. 2.15 minus 0.42. If I go with this step, I'm getting, yeah, oh, pretty close, 4.3. Little. So this has a density range, an overall density range of 1.73. So just a little bit more than 1.65. So when I make a print from this, I should be able to get black to white. And I don't know if you can see this, whether I should even put it here. So, yeah, I shouldn't backlight it because the light comes through. So this is white and this is black. So I'm going to reflection mode and zero this. Okay. So if I measure this white patch, 0.07. If I measure this area where I put the black, 2.11. 2.11 as a straight print, that's pretty black. If I was to tone this, it would reach 2.2 at least. So this indeed gives me white to black. And I can see, although it's not real easy, I mean, if I look closely, I can see separation of these tones. This is a little bit darker than this. This is darker than that. But this actually is clearer than this print. But nevertheless, this is a very good neg. Now, I can see steps here getting darker and darker and darker. At about this point here, it kind of merges. The densitometer would be able to actually see that this is darker than that and so forth. But the human eye, it stops just about here. Well, here, it stops over here. So this is not reflecting as much separation as the transparency does. But nevertheless, it's a very good neg. You can see how the color rendition came out. That's a separate issue. But right now, we're only talking about getting as many steps as we can see here and not losing our white, not losing our black. Okay? So, what I did after I made this negative was I went back to the transparency and I made a highlight mask. Now, prior to this lesson, I've never really addressed film masking for transparencies. The camera's shaking because the cats are playing under here. Okay, so this is, where is it? Oh, here it is. This is the highlight mask. The trick with a highlight mask is to make a sheet of film, again, and it's, you can see these holes here, it's punched so it registers. You do this in the dark and so you can feel where the pins come through the holes. The trick is to make it dark in the highlights and not dark much anywhere else. You can see it went in here, but it stops here. The color, because this is a blue sensitive film, it recorded the blue here. But anyway, this is a highlight mask. And a highlight mask is made, I used Codolith, processed in D19 straight, no dilution. Processing is 2 minutes, about 70 degrees. Similar to how I do film masking for negatives, but now we're doing film masking for transparencies. And this was actually how I learned masking, because I first learned masking when I was making Siebel Chromes and type R prints. I'll talk a little bit about that after I get to this point. So this is now placed in register with this. Okay? And then I make my main mask. And my main mask came out like this. This is masking film, but you don't need to use masking film because masking film is no longer available. The main thing about masking film, it has built-in diffusion, so it's a little bit out of focus. It's soft. You can use a diffusion sheet with conventional film and get the same result. So this, but anyway, this is made through that. So again, it's in contact, punched. Notice that this is clear now. It's clear because that's black, okay? But it's somewhat clearer because of that. But now this is darker than this. So this is going to help you dodge this area of the grayscale. Some of this is dodged, but that is not dodged, okay? And this is clear, obviously. So exposure is allowed through here. Now when I remove this, because I no longer need this, this is used only to make that. And this is placed here. Now this is lifted. This is being dodged for you in perfect register, okay? So if I made this negative with 10 seconds, I can now use 30, at least 20, you know? And what that does is it gives me more exposure here, so I can get more detail out of here. And this will go even whiter. This is getting even more. So now my whites are even snappier. But I don't lose my detail because this is being dodged. And that's a single stage mask. That's the main mask placed on the original transparency to make a new internegative, or you can make a Siebel Chrome. Now I don't have, I can't make Siebel Chromes now. Siebel Chrome is obsolete. Although some people are still making Ilford prints, which is Ilford's name for Siebel Chrome. But these are Siebel Chromes I made in the 70s. And you can see the borders are black because Siebel Chrome is a dye destruction process. The dyes are built into the paper is really thick because the dyes are in the paper. And when you expose it, those dyes are bleached out. And in order to get white, you have to give it exposure. So they're very heavy. The colors are rich, high gloss too. These are Siebel Chromes I made in the 70s, and they lasted a long time. They are known to not fade, but you know, there's a horse here. You can hardly see the separation. So in order to print on such dense material, you need masking. So these prints weren't masked. When I made these prints, I didn't know masking. This is probably 76, 77, I don't know. I learned masking about 79, maybe 78, 79. Been doing it since. So in order to make good prints onto material like this, I needed film masking, and that's why I learned film masking. I was masking transparencies left and right. I was in a darkroom, way late. And sometimes it worked better than other times. I really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that sometimes it worked, so I kept trying it. Kept at it. So these are Siebel Chromes, and because they're so dense, masking is what I turn to. Now, when I make a new negative from this, came out like this. And you may have to look at it very carefully. This, I can see, without using a densitometer, I can see this is darker than that. Okay? This, they both look dark. I'll measure it. There's a piece of tape here. You can hardly see it, but here you can see it clearly. So the separation between black and off black is made possible through the increase in exposure. This separation here is greater here than there. That you definitely can see, and even here you can see more density here than this part of the film. Let's check the density range of this, okay? Again, I'm going to measure so if I measure 2.27. The other one was 2.15. So in fact, it's getting more exposure than the other one. Now if I measure this black area, I get 0.40. So it's less than the other one. The other one was 0.42. So now I'm getting a density range of 1.87 as opposed to 1.73. Okay. Okay, now let's measure this area. This is 1.95, okay? 1.95, I'll measure this area. Same step, 1.83. So although this is darker than that, this is lighter than that. So that tells me that more light is going to go through here than there, even though less light goes through here than there. Well, that's going to produce white anyway. But here, I know what, let's measure this corner next to that lactate. .45. Over here, same area. .49. So it has more density here than there. So theoretically, I should be able to see a better grayscale. Do this. I should be able to see a better grayscale on a print from the other neg. And here it is. Now I don't know. I'm going to zoom in on this. These steps here, you can see this is definitely lighter than that. Can you see that? I'm going to try to zoom in on that. Oh, wait a minute. Showed the wrong print. It's this print. Yeah, that's it. Okay. You have to understand that this is a lot of work to get a little difference. Okay. Now you can clearly see that this tonal range here is moving up here. So now you can see all these steps better. This is actually clearer than that. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. And this is just a little bit lighter than this. It's not that much lighter. The mask dodged this. This got more exposure than that, okay? Okay, so that's where we're at. So the new neg made this print. The negative with no masking and transparency made this print. One thing you'll notice is the color reproduction is different. This is softer, okay? This has a higher contrast. But we're not addressing that. We're just looking at getting as many steps as we can without losing black and white. Okay, now, continue. In my lessons prior to this lesson, I talked about negative masking. So now I'm going to mask this. Okay. I think I'll take this down. Hope you're following. I know this is somewhat technical, or pretty technical. By the way, I'm not getting that many questions on my videos, and I'm assuming that either I make a lot of sense and there are no questions, or people aren't interested in doing this. This is a lot of work to get a fine black and white print. So anyway, okay, so now instead of making a highlight mask, I make what I call a black mask, because I'm on the other end of the grayscale. So this is my black mask. Again, orthocodolith, processed in D19 straight. And the object is to get this black on this film and clear everywhere else. So this and that patch is dark, and this starts to get lighter. When this is placed on top of here, then I make the main mask. Which is over here. And this mask is actually not as heavy. But you can see it's clear here. It starts to get dodged here. So now you're dodging the shadows. This remains clear because that's so dark. That this, being the main mask, goes on top of this neg. Now this is discarded. We don't need this anymore. And this is placed on here. And then we make our black and white print from this. Now this is being dodged. This is all clear, so that's unchanged. So now, straight print. And now this is the print from the masked neg. Now you can see that when you mask the neg, now this is now much lighter than this. All these steps become available to your eye. So this is a print from the mask negative. Notice that the color doesn't have the contrast of this. So when you make the mask, you can use filters. Since it's in contact, the filters just go under the lens or above. It doesn't matter. It doesn't degrade the image because mask is made in contact below. Okay. So I made another mask through just one filter, just to show you. So you can see certain of these patches are being affected, and some are not. So when I make a print from the mask, from this mask placed on that negative, instead of getting this print, I get this print. So you can see the contrast of these patches are different here. The grayscale is the same, but now you have better contrast between these colors, and it's closer to this. Now, depending on how you do it, you can get greater contrast or less contrast between certain colors, which complicates masking, because you can use yellow filters, orange filters, red filters, blue filters, cyan filters, magenta filters, green filters. And not only that, but making your mask through a filter is one thing. You can also make your negative through a filter. Don't forget, we're going on to black and white film. So if you were to use yellow light, like I take my enlarger and I dial in a lot of yellow, and I make my negative from that, the yellows on that happen to be in the transparency, the yellows that are on the transparency will get more exposure, whereas blue will get less exposure. It gets more dramatic if I go to a red filter or an orange filter. So making your negative through a filter would give you a very different rendition of these colors, which is why I include the Macbeth color checker in my grayscale, so that whatever you do, you can keep a record of and see how that affects the color contrast of your black and white print. Even in color print. I mean, even just because, well, let's not talk about color. And you can even make part of your exposure with white light and part of it with yellow light or green light or whatever. So you can go in between the effect that you want. This is true for the mask as well as for the making of the negative. Which is why when I showed this to my good friend Richard Poltowski many years ago, he said, "Tim, this is really hard." I said, "Well, it's not that hard. You just keep doing it. The more you do it, the more it makes sense. And then when you get a photograph, and immediately you know, oh, this photograph would work better if I was to separate this from that. So how do I do that? I make the math. And you think about it and you just try it. And like I said, sometimes it works better than other times. But by this time, it makes a lot more sense to me now than it did 30 years ago. The main thing is, when you get there, when you get to the stage where you're making your 16 by 20 or 20 by 24 print, and even if you're only 80% there, it's so satisfying because it's so much work that when you get to the print stage, yeah, it is better. Even though it's just a little bit better, it's better. And many, many times I've gone back and done it again. Mask it like this instead. And then once in a while, I'll get to that 100%. I'll get to the point where it's, wow, it's exactly what I wanted. It took me a long time to get the Louis Armstrong right. But the Louis Armstrong print is perfect. It's 100%. Yeah, it just happens to be framed on this wall here. I was able to get all the detail that I wanted from the handkerchief. Kept all the sweat, the beads of sweat dripping down his face, this saliva dripping down to his chin. All that is easily seen, and I have good blacks, pure whites. And I gave this print to the great classical guitarist, David Russell. He said to me exactly what I thought. And it was after a concert. I said, "Hey, Maestro, made this for you to get back to, hope it, you can, because he lives in Spain. You have to fly, so hope you can get this into your luggage." He took one look at it and he goes, "I can almost hear the music." That was what I thought when I first saw this on Bob's wall, Bob Cameron, and I said, "That's Louis Armstrong." He goes, "Yeah, I shot that in 1941, or he told me 41. One point he told me 42, so it's either 1941 or 42 in St. Louis." And he said, Louis Armstrong said, "This is the best picture of me actually playing," and Bob says, "Yeah, you can see the spit going down to his chin, and but the handkerchief was all blown out. It's all white." And I thought, I'd love to be able to print that negative. Well, when he finally gave me the negative, it was so hard to print. I got the white, I got the detail out of Hank's chef initially, but his face is so dark that all the burning and dodging and even the masks I made, and finally, I think it was just a year and a half ago, I figured if I make the mask like this, I can get them. There it is, I did it. Anyway, that's masking, okay? So, in short, that's how I make fine black and white prints from Transparencies. Now, it took me about 2.5 weeks to do this. And I was hoping that somebody would try this. To my knowledge, no one masks quite the same way I do. And I learned it by the seat of my hands. It wasn't written down. There were no lessons on, the internet didn't exist. So, but anyway, when I did this, I thought, well, I might as well do something. So I went through some old films and I just grabbed this one. This is a Kodachrome. And it's railroad tracks going off into the distance. It's not a great shot, but I thought this is a hard shot. And so I made a highlight mask. You can kind of see the railroad tracks. I actually exaggerated tracks. So you can see the sky is pretty, I wanted to keep the sky with this slight gradation, but you can see the railroad tracks. So this is a heavy highlight mask. It's not a true highlight. I created a highlight there. And then with this in place, I made the main mask. So now you can see the sky, railroad tracks. And then I made the negative. After I made the negative, I made my black mask. I made a black mask, I made the main mask, I sandwiched it together, and then I made this print. Let's move it on this. And this print actually has more detail than the transparency. I mean, it's easier to see. So this is the print from the Interneg before I masked it. And it's a good print. It's a pretty good print. But after I masked it, then I made this print. And I don't think you can see it. But this black is better than that black. The sky is a little bit different. The trees here are muddy. Here you've got good separation between the black and the detail of the trees. You have to look closely at it. That patch of black, this just sings a little bit. This is a good print. This is a better print. Little different, a lot of work. So that is how I make black and white prints from Transparencies. Can you see those? Yeah. Just making this took transparency masking. So this is already a pretty good print. But if I was able to measure that black, this would be better. This is a negative made from a masked transparency. This is a print made from that negative masked. So as far as I can tell, this is the best I can do. I'm not going digital. You go digital, it's a different ball game. And I've done that too, but I'm not interested in digital too much. Okay? So, I hope this is interesting. That's my take on making black and white negatives from color transparencies, making a black and white print from that black and white internegative. And this is on RC paper, so I don't even know if I'm going to blow that up. Obviously, if you can go through all this trouble, you might as well make a print on fiber-based black and white paper, so it'll last hundreds of years. I think RC paper lasts very long, will last a very long time too. Incidentally, I'm going to go to the window and grab something right back. Probably in about a year, I'll make a video of this. And this has been in the window for a year. This is fiber-based paper. This is resin-coated paper. This is toned in selenium toner. This is untoned. This is toned fiber-based paper, untoned. So it's changed in density now. Oh, and this is inkjet. I just put this up a week ago because I want to see how inkjet fades. Zero this. Yeah, that's good. But I can tell you, the toned RC print went from a 2.2 to 1.7 in 1 year. That's how much the black has changed. The toned fiber-based paper is at 1.95. So definitely this print will last longer, image-wise, than this. So fiber-based paper will last longer. The optical brighteners placed in RC paper seems to hold up better. Although even in the beginning, this wasn't as white as that. Untoned RC paper, which probably started about 2.1, is down to 1.52. This is a year in the sun. This is like the worst condition to place your black and white prints. Untoned fiber-based paper went to 1.64. So toning definitely helps. But let's see where we're at. And I have the readings written down, and I have identical prints over in my darkroom. I'll be able to compare. A year from now, I'll be able to put it side by side. You can see it. But you know, for a whole year, facing west, the sun is shining on it every night. It actually holds up pretty well. I'm wondering what this inkjet looks like after a week. This was really a strong black before. It's still pretty good, 2.4. And so the inkjet's holding up pretty well. But the inkjet is not just black ink, it's CMYK, so we'll see how that looks in a year, huh? Okay. fiber-based black and white paper started at about 2.4. About where the inkjet is right now. So, okay. Obviously, to print this, you need a glass carrier to hold the mask in place. And I don't know what else to tell you. Did I cover everything? That's how I make black and white prints. Most of the prints I've made were from Transparencies. Yeah. I can't think of anything else. So that's it. Hopefully this is of interest to you. If not, at least it's there in internet land. It won't be lost now. For many, many years, it seemed to me like I was the only one who knew this stuff. Probably not, but I didn't come across that many people who mask quite the way I do. I've taught many people who worked with me, training them in the darkroom. It's one of my best printers, and they got involved in mask. But every time they would show me the mask, and I said, okay, now you have to bleach a little bit more and give 3 more seconds to process, and okay, that's good, stop. And so I was supervising them, and they didn't really get inside my head. They just did what I said, and it came out fine. And again, most of this was for color, and we'd make 100, 200, 300 prints from the same negative, you know, for Macy's or Pottery Barn. And I always wanted to share it, but now's the time to do it. Now or never. So it's there. This is how I do it, how I see, how I think. And these are the results, at least in black and white. I don't think I'm going to do a lesson on color because they don't make color internegatives anymore anyway. But color masking can be more complicated when you switch masks for the red exposure. You make color images through a red exposure, gray exposure, and blue exposure. So you switch the masks each time you make those exposures, all while keeping the grayscale gray. You can then have a good grayscale and affect the colors differently. I'm not going to do that. Okay, sure. It doesn't make sense to do that. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoy. Congratulations if you watched this from beginning to end. Okay.